I'm at historic Blakeley State Park, site of one of the last battles of the Civil War. I'm gonna go for a hike and check it out. I noticed the sign shows that mountain bikes are allowed on these trails. They don't look like they'd be very difficult, but since there's a lot of room to explore, I think it'd be quite a bit of fun. That one is the skirmish line trail. Not heading down it, but I do notice a lot of these trails intersect. I have no idea what 15 means. Not sure if that's significant or not. Oh, wow. Look at the size of that bloom. That's that big leaf magnolia. This one's a southern magnolia. Here's a better example of that big leaf magnolia. This one's lying on the ground, but it's still alive. That southern magnolia was like a 6-inch leaf, and you can see the size of this. Alright, switching trails. I'm going to catch several different ones while I'm here. Alright, this is the first trail I've taken that has info from the visitor center. We're on the Breastworks Trail. It says running the length of over half of the Confederate line on both sides of Old Blakeley Road. This hiking trail provides access to redoubts 5 through 9 via a pathway cleared in front of the earthworks. Inexperienced Confederate units, primarily made up of conscripts organized as the 63rd and 67 Alabama Infantry, occupied most of the portion of this line. There's Redoubt 8.
The earthworks in front of you are part of Redoubt 8, one of 9 heavily fortified positions along the 3-mile-long line of Confederate defenses, collectively known as Fort Blakeley. During the Battle of Fort Blakeley on April 9, 1865, the position was the scene of intense fighting as it came under direct assault by federal troops, including Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey, New York, and Wisconsin regiments.
All right, we're leaving the Confederate Breastworks Trail and joining what they call Squirrel's Nest Lane. All right, switching to Baden Plantation Trail. Some sort of primitive cabins for camping. Interesting. Well, I'm 3 miles into the hike and I've only seen the one marker about the battlefield, so I guess I picked the wrong hike to go on. It's still enjoyable. I wanted to get out, enjoy some fresh air, so I'm not complaining about that part. Welcome to the jungle. I don't think there's a lot of hikers that go through here. I survived, got out of that swamp. Not the path that was recommended. So I'm not sure where it was going or if that's seasonal, but it was underwater.
The Alabama Coastal Birding Trail highlights birding spots most frequented by Alabama birders. This trail was developed during the late 1990s. and officially opened soon afterward to offer bird enthusiasts an opportunity to view and enjoy a high diversity of bird species representative of Alabama's Gulf Coast, and to promote birding through tourism in the region. This stop on the trail is part of one of 6 birding loops in Baldwin and Mobile County, totaling over 200 miles.
Wow, that tree's magnificent. This part of the trail is a lot more obvious about the breastworks.
At this spot, Old Blakeley Road crosses the Confederate lines between redoubts 6 and 7. Confederate troops would have been defending the position ahead of you in April of 1865, and the besieging Union Army behind you. Fort Blakeley was not a single fortified position, but a nearly 3-mile-long line of entrenchments anchored by 9 earthen redoubts, or reinforced independent positions. It was named for the town which it surrounded, and stood as one of 2 major Confederate defensive positions protecting eastern approaches to Mobile during the Civil War.
I'm making it back to the campsite. I cut the hike a little bit short. It says right at a little over 4 miles. I wasn't seeing much, so I'm going to regroup and try to see some of the sights by vehicle tomorrow. Looks like this campground or park is set up mostly for exploring by vehicle. Welcome to Blakeley, established 1814. Sign on the right says Legendary Oaks. And then on the left, I got a sign that says Washington Square. Legendary Oaks. Courts met under the jury tree in the early 1800s. The judge presided while sitting on the tree limb. Public executions were held at a nearby hanging tree. This one says Mott House. I found the nearby hanging tree. They do boat tours, but not running any today.
Union troops arrived in front of Fort Blakeley on April 1st, 1865, and immediately began to lay siege. By the time of the assault, some 16,000 Federal soldiers confronted the defenders of the fort. The Army skirmished day and night for more than a week as the Union engineers constructed 3 parallel systems of earthworks located progressively closer to the Confederate position. The Confederates attempted to slow down the Union advance under cover of dark by launching several small-scale sorties and periodically lobbing fireballs, artillery shells filled with quicklime, which temporarily illuminated the areas over which they were fired. They also enlisted the aid of Confederate ships, including the CSS Huntsville, Nashville, and Gaines, lying in the Tensaw River, which shelled the Union lines until eventually driven off by artillery. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on April 9, 1865, the Union Army launched a general assault all along a nearly 3-mile-long front at Fort Blakeley. Some 16,000 troops emerged from a line of trenches a few hundred yards to your left and charged with a yell. They began taking casualties almost immediately, coming under rifle and artillery fire, as well as occasionally tripping the scattered landmines. The surging column quickly drove in skirmishers posted in the rifle pits in front of you. Pausing briefly while under a deadly fire, they cut their way through a series of obstacles made from fallen trees and swarmed the approximately 3,500 Confederate defenders. Fierce close-quarters combat briefly raged. Multiple Union troops were shot down while attempting to plant their flags on the earthworks, and in places, the combatants waged desperate hand-to-hand fighting. The center of the Confederate defensive line, Redoubt 4 witnessed some of the most intense fighting of the Battle of Fort Blakeley. A few hundred veteran troops of the 1st and 3rd Missouri Cavalry dismounted, and a Missouri artillery unit manned this position. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m. on April 9, 1865, approximately 2,500 Union soldiers converged at this point. Once Federal troops reached Fort Blakeley, the outnumbered defenders were quickly overwhelmed. In some places, Confederates surrendered quickly, while in others they fought to the bitter end, even after being surrounded. The entire affair was over within about 30 minutes. The great majority of the garrison was captured, although a very small number of rebels managed to escape. Exact casualty figures are unknown. About 75 Confederates were killed during the assault, while the attackers suffered about 150 killed and around 650 wounded during the entirety of operations. The fall of Fort Blakeley led directly to the surrender of Mobile a few days later on April 12, 1865.
All right, let's see if we can get this fire started. Thanks, Sydney.